Harold Halibut, coming out on April 15th, is a handmade narrative adventure exploration game where at the heart is a story of a colony ship traveling across the stars when its ill-fated landing results in the starship punching through the surface and then promptly sinking to the bottom of an ocean. As fate would have it, some want to find a way to escape and return, and Harold slowly gets pulled into the plot, or falls into it, or is just in it because he's there at the right time, because he forgot to go somewhere else. See, Harold's a maintenance worker who somehow skipped the attributes rolling session of a pre-D&D game, so he's just all bare minimums. And for better or worse, the game's in no hurry to move along, slowly drawing out a story as the hours go by. Harold doesn't have a huge number of puzzles, but what it does have is Harold himself, a man who knows how to keep the colony running, or at least he knows how to use a screwdriver, which in this world and with these people, a mix of normals and scientists, may just be the colony's last hope. If that bothers you, it can also mean that Harold may not be the most fun game to play, but I'll get to that in a moment. Make sure to subscribe and hit notify all. If you're one of the first ones to comment, you can rest assured someone else is going to say they're the first. Games like this are usually set in a trinity of a unique character, the environment, and the puzzles that cross between all of them. It leans far heavier on the characters than you might be accustomed to with other titles like this that might have you going around collecting items. It's not that you don't have those kind of puzzles, but it's more about getting to that point versus taping a straw to an upside-down bathtub to make a submarine. Instead, it comes during the exploration of the odd, the warped, the weird locations, and the society's constructs. While I won't spoil anything here, it's an odd combination, and having conversations with people in the shower, playing odd raffle games, and discussing conspiracies with random old ladies that seem conveniently comfortable in your apartment late at night to sort of hint at some hot gilf action are all a part of the plan. I did find myself checking my journal and locations information like a damned grandpa checking his old map's GPS looking for a Dairy Queen in some countryside road. It wasn't that the game didn't give me information, it's that it doesn't go out of its way to name locations or people. This is something fascinating, and it catches your attention if you're into the game. There are luckily signposts around the game world to indicate what place might go where, but you can still find yourself having a couple times where you might get a bit lost. Luckily, like a lot of games in this style, you have a PDA device that gives you hints and keeps track of quests, but much like Harold himself, it's a bit dense trying to work through it. Feels like someone back in the day thinking we should have just stopped at the technology for wireless home phones instead of jumping to cell phones. It offers a sense of a world from Harold's shoes, things more cumbersome than they need to be, like some Harold filter through everything. Even some of the puzzles that range from unscrewing the panels on a box to messing with the colony ship's almost alien language in its GUI can stymie you. Whether you like that or not is going to end up being the focus of whether you enjoy this game, because it can be refreshing, confusing, at times funny, and other times frustrating, all in a small time frame. One of the striking things about Harold, though, is that it looks amazing and ugly at the same time, like top-down lighting on an old but handsome actor. And that look is a direct mix of 3D scanning and photogrammetry, as well as game engine reworking of the rigging of the characters in the game. So almost every item that you see in the game world is a real physical object they've scanned in. Harold's technology also means it has infinite detail kind of looks to a lot of the physical items. It's got that rough look of the old California Raisins or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer specials from decades ago, or Robot Chicken with its graphics, or Idiocracy when it comes to the denizens of the colony. However, when Halibut hits the hardest is in the atmosphere. A sunk starship fathoms down below the surface of an ocean on an alien planet, replete with its odd and awkward designs. Moving from a slow walk to a slow jog, Harold isn't really stressed about getting anywhere fast, and that's outstanding from a technical point when it comes to the look of the world, but can be a little bit frustrating when it comes to exploring it. But it does offer a unique feel. Sure, it's hard to be unique in a world where 2,000 games per month are released on Steam each year, but there's something noticeably striking about Harold Halibut, something that catches your eye, the surreal world of arcades inside sub-ocean colonies, the main character whose brain's probably nothing more than a half-deflated gray balloon with the word space for rent on it. In this day and age, when many titles push the most detailed and realistic look they can, or the more stylized appearance of cell shading or hand-drawn, Harold Halibut looks incredibly out of balance in that way. Old in a new way, visually rough in a striking way, and familiar to many but a bit out of place, like 40-year-old at a college party, only that 40-year-old is Brad Pitt when he filmed Troy and single-handedly set the goal target weight of every dude who ever watched it. Its performance is about as expected, with a large number of options on the PC, and a surprising number of them actually having a good deal of choices of levels, so a Steam Deck or a Legion might be able to run this with some adjustments. You can for sure on the Legion. I think you are going to get some low FPS here or there depending on what effects you choose. I would suggest that you be aware the game does throw a large number of those effects on screen, and that can hit the GPU a little bit harder than you might expect for a game like this. And on the consoles, it has a performance and a fidelity mode with the typical trade-offs you'd be expecting to get that better performance. When it comes to performances, let's talk about the voices. They're pretty good, not always delivered on point, sometimes a bit like a high school play just due to how the game parses the lines when you're choosing them. What helps is that Harold tries its hardest to deliver the script with a familiarity of friends talking or a boss telling their employee they have to work overtime. There's always something familial about it, and it means it's not a massive info dump in the narrative. That does happen at a later time, but what is thankfully an in-game component. It just feels natural to Harold himself when you play. That means a lot of abuse or neglect heading your way, and sometimes confusing terms or ideas explained to Harold in ways he can't really grasp, and then maybe someone else repeats them in an easier way. Most of the time, delivered as one-liners from other characters towards you, or the back and forth between you and another colony goer trying to explain to Harold what's occurring, though as the story changes, that changes a bit too. There are some great scenes in the middle of Harold Halibut as well that I just want to point out, without spoilers, that were really surprising. When it comes to not surprising, that's the sound. It is laid back, it's atmospheric, it's penetratingly so, almost. Effective in that Harold, no matter what he's doing in this weird damn world, has something below him or around him when it comes to sound. These moments are less automatic gunfire than air filtration systems, rumbling water transportation tubes, pushing Harold through the innards like a sushi roll through someone's sick bowels. And depending on the gamer, this may sound fun or not. And that's where we're going to talk about all of this coming together, the uniqueness of the world, the graphics, the sound, the music, and the voice. How does it make it or not make it fun? Harold isn't fun in the holy shit, this is great, let's go skydiving again kind of way. It's fun in a weird world way sometimes, and it's got some twists I didn't expect. And it's not afraid to be weird and quirky whenever it wants. But it doesn't start out with the oddities of, say, Thimbleweed Park, nor the consistent pun-throwing one-liner cannons that Monkey Island's games do. So it's its own thing, and it won't at all be for everybody. But this is why fun factor matters so much. It's enjoyable when Harold, the almost boringly senseless main character, says something introspective. He's the guy who points out that spoons are just small bowls with handles on them and nobody was even talking about either one, but everybody looks and goes, oh, you know what? That's actually sort of right. If you aren't in it for this kind of game having a slow build, Harold probably isn't for you. And for me, it didn't really grab me enough. I was certainly delighted by the technical bits, and Harold's plight, or his pilgrimage, or whichever you want to call it, is interesting, but it just wasn't enough to keep me invested throughout the whole game without wondering exactly when it would end. It is a slightly longer game, and that mixed with a lack of very many puzzles probably makes this feel a little bit more like an interactive movie than it does hinge on being a full game. However, this game's on Game Pass, so jumping in costs you that for a sub, and you can play some other games, or you could just outright buy it. For me, the story didn't appeal enough for me to say, hey, rush out and get this. But that's also just the story and the character that didn't hit for me. You may like this game more than me, and you may like the idea of jumping into one of these that has a more fleshed out narrative and a longer burn to it. That might work for you. But for me, I would say probably a wait. Peace out. Subscribe.